All right. So we've had a ton of issues with recording this video tonight. I wonder if it's which side's not wanting me to record it. Time will tell. Anyways, so we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. DeLynn, Miss Kelly, and their interview with Doug Fabrizio. Just to clarify, my stance is I perfectly and wholeheartedly agree that people can have questions within the church and they can voice those opinions and ask those questions, those hard questions. The thing that really don't agree with is when they're specifically asked not to do something and then they go against it anyway, such as the demonstration on Temple Square, or trying to be in the spotlight and making a story about themselves. And that's really what I've felt has happened in the past with the ordained women's movement. So I don't disagree that they can ask to be ordained or petition for it or ask to have prayers, but the manner in which they've done it so far has, I guess, rubbed me the wrong way. Anyways, moving on. So within the call, both of Mr. John DeLynn and Miss Kelly explained their stances very well, and I learned a lot and was able to garnish some new insights from them, which was good. I thought it was pretty funny when the caller called in and was asking Mr. DeLynn, hey, if you don't believe some of the truth claims about the church, why even be a member? Isn't that very dishonest? And Mr. DeLynn responded back, hey, I was 8 years old when I was baptized, and I feel that I've been misled a little bit, and so I am entitled to, not believing certain things. More or less, that's what he said. But it was kind of funny, his reaction to that. Like I said, I've tried to record this video 2 or 3 times already, and so I'm kind of recapping what I've already said. So this one might be a little bit shorter than the previous ones I've done, but we're going to keep pushing on. One of the things that Miss Kelly said during the call, which I thought was really profound, is, well, essentially, first of all, she started backing up a lot of her, reasons for dissent or reasons for, really pushing the ordained women's movement in doctrine, and how we are to petition the Lord and to just weary Him with our questions and continue to ask and to pray. And she used the example of Emma, kind of complaining to Joseph Smith about the tobacco, and then that led Joseph Smith to ask God about the tobacco, which led subsequently to a much more in-depth revelation called the Word of Wisdom that, might not have come about if someone hadn't complained about tobacco. Many years before science knew that tobacco was bad for you, I might add. But that's the difference, is maybe this ordained women's group, if they, sent letters to the church, or, once they were acknowledged that, okay, the prophet has seen this, and maybe we will pray about it now, or what have you, then you can kind of back off for a little bit. But instead they kind of doubled down and went and did the demonstration on the Temple Square when they were asked not to, and that was, that's kind of the sticky point. One of the things that I didn't like about the caller, both Mr. Kelly, Mr. DeLynn and Miss Kelly, so I liked the calls and I learned a lot, but one of the things I did not like was how they were kind of holding members hostage. Mr. DeLynn said that he had talked to some of his friends, and they had all said, hey, if you don't go public with this, then you're going to get excommunicated. And so his thought was, okay, well, I'll go public with it. That way, at least the First Presidency will definitely hear about it, and it won't just be a one-off bishop or one-off stake president making this decision. It'll have to come from higher up to make this decision if they really want me gone. But he also said, is, hundreds, if not thousands of people have told me that my podcasts have helped them stay in the church. And I think if they excommunicate me, then they'll be telling all those people that there isn't a place for them in the church. and essentially they'll leave with me. That was the vibe that I got, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think you should try to, hold thousands of members hostage as such. And maybe that wasn't his intent, but that was the vibe that I received. I've personally been helped with some of my questions by Mr. Delenn. There's other things that he says and does, like I've said in the past, that I don't agree with. But if he was excommunicated, I wouldn't leave the church with him. I would, reach out to him like I have in support and say, hey, keep coming. And I'm back. So yeah, holding the members hostage, don't agree with that. Miss Kelly then went on to explain herself as well of why she went to the media. She said that essentially her stake president told her that she was not in good standing and that she needed to let everyone know. I believe that one was back in March. I'm not sure about that though. And then, so essentially she was saying the reason why I took this to the New York Times was because the stake president said that he was going to let people know that I wasn't in good standing if I didn't let him know. I think she's pushing that one a little bit too, where, letting people know perhaps on her website that I'm no longer in good standing with the church is vastly different than sending a letter of possible excommunication to the New York Times. Maybe it's not in your eyes. It is in my eyes, because people who don't understand what this letter is, the possible outcome of the letter could be nothing, could be absolutely nothing. But to say to the New York Times that, oh, I'm going to get kicked out of the church because of this, when that's only one of the possible outcomes, is a little disingenuous. So yeah, that's how I kind of feel about that. Is I believe her stake president's intentions were for her to say, to kind of post on her blog or her website, hey, I'm no longer in full fellowship with the church. I'm still a member, but I'm working through some things. That's different than, hey, editor of New York Times, let's make some headlines. Maybe not. Maybe it is different. Like I said, I've been helped by John Delenn. I don't disregard that they have a place to question. One of the main questions is, when does apostasy happen? From what I've gathered from all these different stories and different people that have been excommunicated in masses before, apostasy happens not when you just have personal questions, or not when you're addressing those concerns with your bishop or even within your own congregation, but the apostasy happens when you're actively recruiting other people to your ideology that is opposed to what the church is currently teaching, or even what the church is directly telling you to do or not to do. That's apostasy. And so there is a culture within the church where it's, obey and you'll be blessed. And I think that's kind of expected to a degree, is if you believe that it's truth, then you'll obey what the prophet is telling you. One of my friends asked me, well, if the prophet told you to do something that you really disagree with, how would you feel? He was trying to put me into their shoes. And really there isn't an issue that I feel as strongly as, Miss Kelly feels about ordained priesthood. There isn't an issue. Like, I'm not really intent on being a young woman's advisor or something. That doesn't really matter to me. Not that young women's advising would be a bad calling. I'm just saying that I'm not as heartfelt in my desire to become one as she is to hold the priesthood. And so it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of them, because there's nothing that I would empathize or be able to relate to as such, at least that I can think of right now. But so my friend was trying to get me in those shoes and trying to think of how they think, and it was an interesting exercise, but again, it's hard for me to empathize, so it didn't really work. Apostasy happens when you're actively recruiting people and actively trying to change the will of God, I would say. Change what the prophets and apostles are going to do. I don't think it's inappropriate to have them ask them to pray about something. I think it's inappropriate to demand that they change things. With John Dehlin, it is interesting because he is very public and says that he doesn't believe the truth claims about the Book of Mormon. And so what kind of effect does that have on other people? Obviously, there's going to be other people who watch his podcast and listen to him, especially members. Maybe they'll go along with that as well and say, oh, well, if John's a member and he can do that, then I'm going to not believe that either. And that's kind of a hairy place to be as well, because the Book of Mormon needs to be true, right? If Joseph Smith was a prophet and the Book of Mormon is evidence of that, and the restoration of the priesthood, all of those things are kind of intertwined. Not even kind of intertwined, they are. So one of the things that I learned from the exercise with my friend is I kind of noticed that in his eyes, everything is always wrong with the church. In my eyes, I would like to think that not everything is always right with the church, but I definitely, I tend to look to the brighter side of things. I tend to give the church more leniency and more slack than others might. And so I thought that was an interesting question. Where do you fall? Are you one of those that the church is always right, no matter what? Are you one of those that the church is always wrong, no matter what? Are you one of those that looks to doctrine and prays and asks God and tries to understand more clearly from that side of things? And I don't really know. You can put the answer in the comments below. But what kind of Mormon, non-Mormon person on the outside are you? I would like to think that everyone gives the church a fair shot and doesn't just automatically assume that everything they do is wrong. There's a lot to learn from the church, a lot to learn from such organizations that can really benefit you and society as a whole. Particularly, I love the church's welfare system, and I think that a lot of people in a lot of different countries and organizations could benefit from it. But back to Dehlin and Kelly. Again, with the holding the members hostage thing, assuming that excommunication is necessary for John Dehlin to assume all these people leaving would stop the church from excommunicating him, I think is putting himself on a bit of a pedestal. I think that the church will ask God. I think that I would pray and hope that his direct leaders would be praying and asking God. And I don't think that God is a respecter of persons, and he's not going to say, oh, well, you're apostatizing, but if I excommunicate you, then I'm going to lose 1,000 members, or whatever it may be. God's still going to excommunicate you. He's not going to change the rules just because there's 1,000 members that are going to follow you. And so, there you have it. There's a lot of subjective bias that comes into play at different times, but I hope that everyone involved, is in direct communication with God and fervent prayer to know what is best and to help everyone involved. A couple things on that. I'm going to put a link down in the bottom to both of the interviews. I think you'll find that Doug Fabrizio was a little bit more harsh on the LDS spokeswoman. He kept pressing on her to speculate on things that she didn't have the answers to. Basically just wanted her to make something up. I kind of felt that way. Anyways, go formulate your own opinions. Make sure you pray about it. And just remember, you won't love it unless you live it.